today's transmission, we are talking about Shambhala. And I know you may have no idea what that is. I had no idea what it is till recently, but it's very important if we're going to achieve peace on earth. Now, you will understand what that means by the end of this transmission. But as we dive in, let's start off with talking about when can we expect the return of Kalki? Now, if you're like me, who did not grow up in India or in a Hindu family, you may have no idea who Kalki is, and that's completely okay, because we're going to dive into it and tell you who he is. Because you may have heard of the second coming of Jesus. You may have heard of the Matrium Buddham, if you're a Buddhist. If you're a Muslim, you have heard of Isha. Or if you're a Jew, you have heard of the Messiah. Now, what if I were to tell you that all of these are the same entity, the same person, the same soul, the same energy? Now, maybe you'd be skeptical of it, but by the end of this, you may not be so skeptical. And I hope you stick around for it, because this is going to be a packed one. But to start off, let's go from the perspective of the Hindus. We'll be jumping in around and all throughout this, but let's talk about when that return is coming, right? Because Isha is supposed to be coming back. The Matriya Buddham, the Buddha, should be coming back. Jesus should be coming back. When is this return going to happen? Well, let's see what the Hindus say about it, and we'll jump into some of the other ones. So, for starters, many of you have been convinced to believe, as myself, that it's sometime in the future, right? The second coming of Jesus should be in the future. It's 3,000 years from now. It's forever from now. Many people believe that it's, some distance past, distant future time. But when you peel back the layers of this, you realize, and whenever you read these ancient texts, you realize that that's not the case. It's not that far away, if it's even in the future. Because what you realize is that this idea of it being in the future is an illusion that has been created by the dark yogis. Because take a step back. If you're Messiah, if you're Savior, if the second coming of Jesus, if Isha is supposed to keep coming in the future, then it's never now. It's never the present moment. So therefore, it will never be here, which would be a great illusion for the dark yogis to create. So let's break that illusion in this transmission. If we look through some of the Hindu texts, Kalki's return is prophesized, like many of the other texts, which we'll get into later, during a time of moral decline and aversion away from Dharma. The Kalki Purana, chapter 1, verse 25 states, when Dharma, which is like being in tune with spirit, like being on your spiritual path. It says, when Dharma has declined to its lowest and adharama rules, Kalki will manifest to end this age. The Mahabharata says that Krishna prophesied, and Kalki is the reincarnation of Krishna. Krishna prophesizes that, quote, when the end of the yuga comes, which is like an epoch, I shall appear as Kalki, destroying all demons. Look around. Do we see any demons? The Bhagavata Purana, 12:18-20, says Kalki, born in Shambhala, which we're going to get to in a bit, will restore righteousness, ending the Kali Yuga's chaos and beginning the Satya Yuga when, quote, the strong overthrow the weak. So the Kali Yuga is what we transitioned out of, and we have already actually made it into the Satya Yuga. And we've been in the Satya Yuga for about 36-ish years, but we'll get to that. I don't know if we'll get to it in this podcast. We'll see what the yogis want. But what I will say, though, is that the key here is noting that Kalki's return, the second coming of Jesus, Isha, the Messiah, the Matriya Buddham, all come back when we see the strong overthrowing the weak, when the strong have power over the weak, when the weak have no voices for themselves. And look around the world. Do you see the powerful protecting the weak? Do you see the weak having a voice? We just saw people marching throughout the streets for the genocide that's occurring, and Not much has changed. So do the weak actually have a voice? I would argue they do not. How about the fact that the Epstein files still have not been released, when that's like the number one thing that the weak want? And here's the thing is, whenever you're a powerful individual, your karma is like doubled, like the effort, if you will, because it's very easy for you to prey on the weak. It's very easy for you to take care of the weak. So if you do good, it like amplifies it, but if you do bad, it amplifies it. But that's a whole different side conversation. But let's go into other evidence, which we have a little bit of Buddhist evidence with the Zhang texts. They also mention Shambhala as this spiritual equalizer, which we'll get into a little bit, but that's important for a bit later when we talk about where it is. But the point, though, is that in Buddhism and in these texts, they talk about modern parallels, which include the societal concerns like corruption, unaddressed injustices, like where are the Epstein files, and reflecting on this prophesized decline. Because, I mean, I think we all look back and we think, where did we go wrong? Where did America go wrong? Where did the world go wrong? But it's a little bit more nuanced than that. And not to mention that they talk about how there will be real world signs, such as natural disasters increasing, such as famines, such as earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis, hurricanes. We see famines everywhere. We see all of this increasing. And not to mention, if we bring this back, so that's kind of what the Buddhists and the Hindus say. Well, if we look at Christianity, we have Matthew 24:7-8, where Jesus prophesies. He talks about how there will be famines, there will be earthquakes. We have in Luke 21:11, there will be great earthquakes, there will be famines. We have in Revelations 6:12-17 and 16:18-21. All of these indicate that these are the key markers for the return of Kalki, of Jesus. We also have, if you're a Muslim, we have the Quran, which would be 99:1-3. We have 82:1-4. If you're following Judaism, in Isaiah 24:18-20, in Joel 2:30-31, in Zechariah 14:4-5, all of them talk about once moral decline occurs, once everything goes into chaos, that's the time that Kalki, Vishnu, Jesus, Isha, the Buddha return in order to reestablish Dharma. So, with all that being said, where is this Shambhala? Where is Shambhala? Well, Shambhala means equal or consistent, like spiritually balanced, right? Which is the yin, the yang, being able to balance your masculine, your feminine energies, all of this, right? Which would be the sign of an enlightened individual, is if they're severely balanced. So why would they not incarnate in a place that is balanced from a nature perspective, right? Well, what's interesting is majority of people have this illusion that Shambhala is in the mountains. And let me dispel that really quickly, because if you take a look at the way that our world is set up, is that if you're at the very far North Pole, or South Pole, you are exposed to extreme temperatures throughout the year, right? There's no sun. There's absolutely no sun for half the year, all the sun for the other half of the year, right? It's very drastic. Nothing can survive there. Nothing can live. Nothing can thrive. So instead, it needs to be somewhere that has a more consistent, a more equal temperature, more balanced for yogic practices. Now, the area that this would be in Mysore, India, or in Bangalore. These are the two locations that have the ideal year-round ability to practice yogic teachings. And this is due to their elevation. It keeps them out of the heat, and it kind of protects them from monsoons. And there's actually IMD data that confirms that these cities have some of the most temperate urban climates. Thus, this symbolic reading can kind of frame South India as that balanced place, this hidden realm that is suitable for the birth of the one who's going to restore Dharma, Kalki, Isha, Jesus, the Messiah, which contrasts with where people currently believe it is, which is in like the hills of the Himalayas, which again, the climate there is very unstable. Not very unstable, but it's more unstable than it should be. Now, this relevance, this location, originates from a prophecy in what's called the Vishnu Purana, 424, and according to which Shambhala will be the birthplace of, you guessed it, Kalki, which is the next incarnation of Vishnu. And again, that's a whole separate conversation, just laying some breadcrumbs here in case you want to go find other stuff to dive into. So he will be the next incarnation of Vishnu, who will usher in a new age called the Satya Yuga. And it is prophesized that this will how he'll create his ruling kingdom, which in Buddhist philosophy is called the Maitreya, which is where the future Buddha will be. Again, you seeing the parallels here? Now in South India, particularly Tamil Sada, texts and variants of the Kalki Purana, which Kalki Purana is all about Kalki. They relocated actually Shambhala to Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, specifically Bangalore and Mysore. So there are some texts that validate it. There are some texts that actually make that connection and say, hey, these are the locations of where the Savior will be born. I'm not sure what a good overall name is for that, right? Like, how do we combine all those names into one? That'd be a good word. What would be the word? We'll come up with a word. But before we go any deeper, so that's kind of that. But I want to at least dive into the text and what the texts have to say about this connection that exists between all of these characters, because it's there if you just look for it. Right? So first of all, that's a great sentence. First of all, we have in Hinduism that Kalki is described as Vishnu's final avatar, but the key description is that he's riding a white horse and he's coming to end the age of chaos and usher in the age of truth. We have this in the Kalki Purana, which is chapter 11, verse 8. Kalki, with his sword of truth, will appear as a divine warrior and judge the unrighteous. The day of judgment, I think we talk about that in Christianity, because in Christianity there also exists this parallel in Revelations 19:11-16, where Jesus returns on a white horse as a divine warrior to judge and distort righteousness. Sounds exactly like Kalki. Buddhism, in the Tala Chakra, hopefully I'm pronouncing this stuff correctly, the Kala Chakra Tantra and Zhang Zung texts describe Shambhala as a spiritual equalizer, where Maitreya, the future Buddha, will return to defeat evil and restore balance. Why are they just all saying the same thing? Makes me feel like I'm going crazy. And Judaism, also, the Messiah, which is awaited in Jewish mysticism and their belief structure, spoken of in Isaiah 11:1-9 and in Micah 5:2, is a divinely anointed figure who will restore universal peace and establish justice. Sounds like the same person. And then we have, if we're a Muslim or in Islam, call it Isha or Jesus, and the Mahdi, which is like the new heaven, new earth, are central to Islamic beliefs. Quran 43:61 talks about it, and they describe Isha's return to defeat Dajjal, which is the Antichrist, and last but not least, restore justice. Did I make my point? Does my point resonate? Do you see what I'm getting at here? And would it be crazy that incarnation already occurred? I mean, think about it. Look at the world events. Look at the things that have occurred that have started breaking this illusion of the power dynamics that have occurred in our society. And, it happened, this birth. I'll give you a little hint. I don't know if I'm allowed to go how deep I can go in this, but it happened. The birth of this divine character actually occurred in the late 80s. Now, I'm going to just leave it at that because I don't want to go too deep on that quite yet. I'm going to get some confirmation. But it occurred in the late 80s. And think about it. Since then, have you not seen this veil of illusion starting to disappear? I mean, for me, I think the most recent great thing that kind of occurred that like really got people to wake up and question things would have been 9/11. And since then, I mean, heck, just in the last 5 years, how many things have occurred that like wake you up to question things? I mean, most recently we have the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We have, why am I blanking? We have the whole COVID. I mean, so many things where you're questioning the authority because those in power have been misaligned. It's the best, most politically correct way I can say it. They have been tilted off their axis of humanity. And they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing in a place of power. They're trying to rule as opposed to govern. They're trying to dictate as opposed to listen. And this has deteriorated our entire world. And it's why I think that you would even start to see at a large scale these earthquakes. You see these mudslides. You see natural disasters happening that we haven't seen in forever. And everyone wants to point to climate change, but I just see it as a falling out of order with the balance and harmony of nature, of the universe. So, again, good thing he's back. But also, in a way for us to, how do I articulate this? To bring more peace, more sanctity, we need to also come together. Because I think that's a huge piece that I'm showing here, if you will. I want to illuminate, is that we all are praying to the same energy, to the same universal force. It's highlighted in all the texts. So what are we doing? You call it Allah, I call it nature, this person calls it God. So what? It's all the same entity, the same being. And in order for us to do that, to restore some of this power, we do need to start to create divine energies. And I made a Indigo Education podcast a while ago about this, and I'd have to look up the title of it. But I believe the title was something along the lines of temples or churches or whatever. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like sacred sites or sacred areas. And the essence is that you give divine energy to different beings through temple, through worship, through different items. And so if you've ever seen, and we've talked about this before, where Jesus is up on the cross, it's torturing him. We've talked about this before, so I can't go too deep into it here. But the point that I bring up is that we have to start honoring him as a king. And that's why I always have this guy right above me. And so one of the things that I have been guided by Source, by Isha, by Kalki, by the second Jesus to do is to start building temples so that we can start honoring Jesus as a king. Now, don't get too distracted because he's all white. If you want to visualize him as having dark skin, whatever you want, do your thing. But the important thing is to visualize him as a king. And in order to do this, we need to start creating temples, churches that honor King Jesus, that honor him as a king. So what I have started to do is anybody who purchases my book, or there will be a meditation that I'll be posting soon in the near future, or even just by watching to this point, you know, I've gotten some revenue ads from either Rumble or YouTube, so it's very helpful. I am taking that money and I am saving it, And we are going to use that money in the future to build temples, to build churches, so that we can honor King Jesus. So, whenever you buy my PDF, when you buy my book, it's not like that money's going into my pocket. I'm going to be using that to buy, to purchase, to build these great things. And I mean, I even have a, what's it called? Buy me a coffee. I'm not using that for coffee. The website says buy me a coffee, but I'm using it to restore these, to build these churches, to build some temples over in India, because we need those divine energies to come back to earth. And that's a whole side conversation that I'll have to get right off to see how much I'm allowed to go into and discuss that. But the point of this, the main point here is that we need to come together. If you've watched to this point, if you listen to this point, you have supported more than enough. But if you feel like you need to take that extra leap forward of supporting, I highly recommend my PDF ebook. It dives into the history of the church. It dives into the history of the Bible. If you're not much of a reader and you do want to contribute, buy me a coffee is a great option as well. And if you're still on the fence, that's totally cool. Keep your money. No hard feelings. In the future, we will be having a meditation that I will be releasing. So that will be fire. That will help bring more calmness into your life. It's created a ton of calmness for me. So with all that being said, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see all of you in the 6th dimension.